Neo-Nazis. The opening of Saw 3D throws us right into a public spectacle where four neo-Nazis find themselves chained together in interconnected death traps. These aren't just random victims. The film makes sure we know exactly what kind of people they are. We see flashbacks of their hate crimes, their violent behavior, and their complete lack of remorse for the pain they've caused innocent people. The traps themselves are designed for maximum shock value. One is super glued to a car and has his skin ripped clean off. Another gets crushed by car tires and explosive metal goes flying everywhere. All the deaths are slow and painful. But here's the thing, while nobody's going to shed a tear for neo-Nazis, their deaths feel more like cartoon violence than real justice. And the next death on our list hits much closer to home, because sometimes the most deserved deaths come from the most personal betrayals. Timothy Young. Timothy was the drunk driver who killed Jeff Denlin's 8-year-old son Dylan in a car accident. His death in the rack might be one of the most brutal in the entire franchise. It all started when Timothy got behind the wheel drunk, slammed into Dylan, and then walked away with nothing more than a light sentence. He showed no genuine remorse, no understanding of the devastation he'd caused. Jeff finds Timothy strapped into a device called the rack, which slowly rotates his body while systematically breaking every bone. First, his arms snap with sickening cracks, then his legs, and finally his head twists until his neck breaks. Jeff has the power to save him by retrieving a key, but he has to choose between forgiveness and revenge.
Device is going to start twisting. There is a chance he might live, though, with your help.
The parallel between a destroyed childhood and a destroyed body creates perfect poetic justice. Timothy gets to experience a fraction of the agony he put the Denlon family through, and Jeff gets to decide whether mercy or justice wins out. But Timothy's death was just about one family's pain. The next victim's actions created something much worse: Cecil Adams. Cecil was a drug addict whose botched robbery attempt accidentally caused Jill Tuck's miscarriage, leading to the stillbirth of John Kramer's son Gideon. This single moment of carelessness literally created the Jigsaw Killer and every death that followed. Cecil was exactly what you'd expect from a desperate addict: reckless, selfish, and completely oblivious to how his actions affected other people. During a robbery at Jill's recovery clinic, he slammed a door right into her pregnant stomach, causing the miscarriage that would transform John Kramer from a civil engineer into a serial killer. John makes Cecil his first test subject, strapping him into a crude version of what would become the signature Jigsaw trap design. It's rough and direct, nothing like the elaborate contraptions that would come later. Cecil has to navigate through a maze of metal rods to reach freedom, but when he desperately lunges for the exit, he triggers the mechanism that drives multiple rods straight through his face. What makes this death so significant is that without Cecil's careless violence, none of the Saw movies would exist. Every victim who dies in a Jigsaw trap can trace their fate back to this one moment of thoughtless brutality. Cecil created Jigsaw, but our next victim profited from his work: Art Blank. Art was a criminal defense attorney who made his living helping dangerous people escape justice. He thought his legal expertise and silver tongue could talk him out of anything, even a Jigsaw trap. Art represents every sleazy lawyer who prioritizes winning over what's right. He spent his career getting violent criminals off on technicalities, helping them return to the streets to hurt more people. As long as he got paid, he didn't care about the victims left in his client's wake. Jigsaw forces Art to wear a device on his back that will sever his spine unless one of the detectives trapped with him dies first. True to form, Art immediately starts trying to manipulate everyone, using his legal training to convince the cops to kill each other so he can survive. He's wheeling and dealing right up until the moment Detective Rigg panics and shoots him when the trap mechanisms start going off. The irony is perfect. A man who spent his career helping people avoid consequences finally faces them himself. All his manipulation and legal maneuvering can't save him when the stakes are real. Art enabled crime for money, but our next victim made money by denying life itself: William Easton. William was a health insurance executive whose cost-cutting policies literally decided who lived and died based on profit margins. William denied coverage to people who desperately needed medical treatment, including John Kramer himself when he was seeking experimental cancer therapy. To William, these weren't people with families and dreams. They were just numbers that affected his company's bottom line. Jigsaw puts William through a series of tests that force him to make the same impossible choices his policies created for families. He has to decide which of his employees deserve to live and which should die, experiencing firsthand the weight of those decisions. In the end, he's strapped down and injected with hydrofluoric acid by the sister of a man who died because William denied his coverage. The acid burns through his stomach from the inside while he's helpless to stop it. He gets to feel the same powerlessness that his victims felt when they were denied the care that could have saved their lives. William's death was about systemic cruelty, but sometimes the cruelest deaths come from the simplest crimes. Paul Leahy. Paul was a man who had attempted suicide but survived, leading Jigsaw to believe he didn't appreciate the gift of life. John saw Paul's suicide attempt as the ultimate waste. Here was someone who had been given a second chance at life but still didn't value it. In John's twisted logic, Paul needed to earn his appreciation for existence through suffering. Paul wakes up in a basement, trapped in a room with a maze of razor wire blocking the only exit. He has to crawl through the cutting metal to reach freedom before the door locks forever. The razor wire cuts him to ribbons as he crawls, and he eventually bleeds out just short of freedom. What makes it so brutal is the hope. He can see the exit. He knows escape is possible, but the pain of getting there literally kills him. Paul's trap was meant to teach appreciation for life, but our next victim learned that some games aren't meant to be fair. Seth Baxter. Seth was a convicted murderer who killed Detective Hoffman's sister and received a light sentence due to legal technicalities. Hoffman never got over the injustice of seeing his sister's killer back on the streets so quickly. So Hoffman designs a pendulum trap for Seth that's supposedly winnable if he follows the rules.
To avoid the pendulum, all you have to do is destroy the things that have killed.
Seth has to crush his own hands in a vise to stop a massive pendulum blade from swinging down and cutting him in half. Seth does exactly what he's told, screaming as he pulverizes his hands to stop the blade. But the trap was rigged from the beginning. Even after Seth destroys his hands, the pendulum keeps swinging and cuts him clean in half. The look of betrayal on his face is almost as brutal as the blade itself. While Seth deserved punishment for murder, his rigged trap showed that even those claiming to serve justice can be just as corrupt as the criminals they're hunting. But the next victim embodied police corruption. Angie Garza. Garza built her career on willful ignorance. Whenever internal affairs complaints came across her desk, whenever evidence of police brutality or planted evidence surfaced, she buried it to protect the department's image. She chose institutional loyalty over justice for the communities her officers were supposed to serve. Her trap takes place in the police department's archive room, surrounded by files from all the cases she helped cover up. Hot wax drips slowly toward her face while she's given a horrific choice: sever her own spinal cord with a bone saw to escape, or let the wax burn through her eyes and face, but can't complete the task before the wax covers her face and kills her. But let me just say how dumb this is. Like one of you guys mentioned on my last Saw video, the most painful deaths in Saw, if you sever your spinal cord there, you likely wouldn't even be able to breathe, leaving us with an unwinnable trap. Not cool. Garza enabled corruption from the top, but our next victim was corrupt from the bottom up: Brad Halloran. Brad was a detective whose career was built on framing innocent people and planting evidence to close cases. His death delivered the kind of justice that dirty cops rarely face in real life. Halloran destroyed innocent lives to pad his arrest record. He planted drugs on people who'd never touched them, coerced false confessions from suspects who had nothing to do with the crimes, and sent people to prison to advance his own career. To him, truth was just an obstacle to closing cases. The trap manipulates Halloran into exposing his own corruption. When the mechanisms activate, razor-sharp lasers shoot out from all directions, impaling him like a human pincushion. His head splits into many different pieces that fall apart in one of the most gruesome and painful deaths ever. Halloran trapped innocent people with false evidence, but our next victim trapped people in a much more literal way: Obi Tate. Obi played the role of concerned fellow victim in the house, but he was actually working for Jigsaw the whole time. He helped abduct every person trapped in that building, delivering them to their personal hell while pretending to be just as scared and confused as everyone else. When the group needs someone to crawl into a furnace to retrieve antidotes, Obi volunteers, supposedly being heroic, but the moment he's inside, the door slams shut and locks behind him. The temperature starts rising immediately, and he realizes he's been played by his own employer. He pounds on the furnace door as the heat builds, experiencing the same panic and desperation that he helped create for his victims. The metal gets so hot, it starts cooking him alive, and he dies screaming for help that never comes. Obi helped create other people's nightmares, but our next victim created nightmares of a much more personal nature: Ivan Lansness. Ivan was a predator who turned what should have been a safe space into a hunting ground. He used his access to room keys to assault unconscious women, destroying their sense of safety and trust. The trap gives him a choice that's really no choice at all. He can blind himself with the sharp implements provided, supposedly as penance for his crimes, or face the alternative. When he hesitates too long, the mechanism activates and begins systematically tearing his limbs from his body. All 4 of his arms and legs are ripped off by the machine while he's still conscious and screaming. The dismemberment is designed to mirror how he tore apart his victims' lives and sense of security. Ivan's victims never got justice until Jigsaw stepped in, but the most deserved death in Saw history involves the most personal betrayal: Mitch. Mitch was a motorcycle salesman who knowingly sold a defective bike that killed John Kramer's nephew. Mitch knew the motorcycle had faulty brakes, but he sold it anyway because he needed the commission. He didn't care that someone could die, he just wanted the money. When John's nephew crashed and died because of those defective brakes, it devastated John and contributed to his transformation into Jigsaw. The trap is pure poetic justice. Mitch is strapped upside down over a series of spinning saw blades that are powered by the exact same motorcycle he sold. The defective bike that killed John's nephew becomes both judge judge and executioner, with Mitch suspended just out of reach of the key that could save him. As the motorcycle revs and the blades spin faster, Mitch stretches desperately for the key but can't quite reach it. The blades slowly rise toward his face while the engine noise grows louder, creating a perfect crescendo of mechanical vengeance. The motorcycle that killed John's nephew became Mitch's executioner, and that's why this death stands above all others in the Saw franchise. If you enjoyed this video, you'll love this video about the most brutal Saw traps that'll make you never want to do anything wrong again.